may be wondering, well, okay, that all sounds good. You've sold me on the idea, but I don't have any idea how to do it. Like, how do I actually forgive? The secret is in what I was talking about at the beginning, right? So your willingness to actually be present is what allows you to do that. I could give you techniques. I could give you a guided practice, and that might be valuable and useful. But what I think will be more useful is to point you to that which can, when you understand what I'm pointing to you right now, uh, you really don't need anything else. This will help you, whether it's forgiveness or love or acceptance, or you want more focus on things or whatever it is. What I'm about to point out to you is the thing that can help you to achieve all of that, because it's, deep down, you want something very, very, very much. And what you want deep down is far beyond the Ferrari or the, improved health or the improved relationships, as important as those things might be. So I'm not in any way dismissing those things. Whatever things you want, if you truly want them, it's important. But deep down, even more important than that is what you want at the core. And we could say that's to know yourself. We could call that by many other names. And how are you going to achieve that if you are occupied, being frustrated because you don't seem to have enough information yet? If your attention is always out there on all the things, then you're not actually going to be able to fulfill what you want very deeply. So, in order to fulfill what you want very deeply, you have to actually be willing to be present. And your brain might say, but how do I do that? Well, the thing is, it's not a doing. What can help is to notice all the doing that you're doing. So you could just notice, that attention to the next thought and the next thought and the next thought. And you could pay attention to how fast and tense everything is. The grasping for something, this sort of desperation, like, I need another thing, I need something to hold on to. And you could notice that. And in noticing that, something really remarkable can happen, which is that you could actually start to allow yourself to slow down, so that you could notice that there's actually more space alongside with maybe the grasping and the doing, right? So that activity may still be there, but I need the next thing, but what do I do? But what about later? How am I going to fix it? He didn't tell me the solution yet. How am I going to, no. That might still be going on. But you could also notice that alongside that, there's a space. And that space allows you to actually start to connect to what it is that you most deeply want, which is already present. And you might notice that as that's happening, on the one hand, there's this old pull to it, but I've got to do this stuff. I've got to hold on to these things. I've got to figure it all out. If I don't, then everything's going to fall apart. And I've got to hold on to the grievances. And because if I don't, then they'll do it again. And all that stuff is there. And you might notice that that kind of requires a little bit more effort than you really want to make right now. And you could just start to realize that here in this space is what it is that you've always been looking for deeply. I'm not saying this satisfies things at all levels because it doesn't, but deeply, very deeply, what you've always been looking for. And you might have called it by many names. You might have called it love. You might have called it acceptance. Whatever you might have called it, even if you didn't call it anything, you might notice that it's actually here. There's such a wonderful sweetness. And again, the mind might be still going, saying, I don't get it. How's this going to solve anything? That might be happening. But you might also be able to notice in this space, there's this deep fulfillment that you don't have to do anything for. It's just here. And this is a secret that can help you with forgiveness, because you could just start to notice that there's a contrast. On the one hand, you could just keep holding on, clinging to doing things the old way, trying to solve the problems through the resentments and grievances. But you could notice that in contrast, there's this deep fulfillment that's here. And you could, just for a moment at least, you could just choose that. Not to get rid of anything, but just sort of like when you go to sleep at night, right? In order to go to sleep, you have to be willing to let go. And in a similar way, you're not getting rid of anything. It will be here for you later if you want it. But just for this moment, you could just choose just to let go of the habitual gripping and just to choose this rest that's here, that offers you a deep fulfillment and a nourishment. And when you recognize that this is a possibility that's here, then you might find that you could choose this more often. And you might notice that this gives you better results than holding on to the grievances. And that when you do this, it's different than falling asleep. There's similarities, but it's different because here you're remaining awake. And by remaining awake, what happens is that essence that you really want to receive from the experiences that you've been carrying around, naturally you can receive that. You don't have to think about it a great deal. It just sort of naturally comes to you because you're present. So you might find that that is helpful.